views and opinions you are about to hear are of the hosts and do not reflect the management of CaveRadioBroadcasting.com.
Good afternoon. It's Thursday, September 8th, year of our Lord 2016, and you are listening to Down the Rabbit Hole, a Gen Pop Media production. So, I think we're going to be doing a little free-for-alling, and I think there's some interesting things we can talk about. Kat had a great topic that I think we'll touch on. And, just want to go over some current events. As usual, I want to throw some shout-outs to the DCDFoundation.org as a charitable foundation that we have some involvement in. And it's a great cause, trying to help kids who might not otherwise have the chance to have an education.
Yeah, like a simple education.
Like rudimentary, elementary education.
Grade school, yeah. So
we are trying very hard to get as many of them into school and help them with literacy as much as we can. So you can check that out at the DCD, that's THE, the DCDFoundation.org. And check out our Literacy Through Faith initiative, which is what that one is all about.
Right.
Always I am the face of truth.com and architects and engineers for 9/11.org, right?
You'll find it.
Yeah.
I get them all. I get my own messed up.
Yeah, there's orgs and comms and nets. And
yeah.
But at any rate, they have been longtime supporters. Excuse me. And they're very good people. They do a great job at gathering information and doing their best to bring awareness to the truths of our world. So I'd like to shout out to them. And as always, I'd like to dedicate the show and give a big shout out to the original truther himself. That would be Jesus Christ. So I got Kat, I got Dave, I got Kenny, who's checking out, do some homework. Say hi quick, Ken.
What's going on, everybody?
Same
there
old.
He is.
So, Kat, Dave, what's up with you guys?
Anybody watch the, it wasn't the presidential debate. It
No
was
way.
The Commander-in-Chief Forum.
No.
Did you watch it?
No. Hillary Clinton is kryptonite to me. I can't even look at her. So I pretty much get what Donald Trump's about. So, no, I didn't watch it.
Well, it was. I watched it, and I got to be honest. I haven't been following politics in a long time because I'm just. I know. I feel like
more closely this year. I think it's more important, but it's also a little more interesting than it usually is.
Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, Hillary Clinton, in my opinion, I just sat there just thinking, why and how did she get to where she's at? I mean. I will tell you from if I was going to be objective about it and set my feelings aside towards the end for, debate style, she actually did okay, towards the end. But what was so fascinating to me is Matt Lauer. I mean, he pummeled her, in my opinion. I mean, he spent more time, grilling her about her emails and hammering her on that. And then when Trump came out, I mean, the guy still cannot explain to me what exactly he intends, how exactly he intends to do all the things that he's proposing. He talks in circles, and after you hear him talk, you're sitting there going, what did he just say? But Lauer was giving him softball questions. I mean, it was so. It was really weird.
See, I would have thought it would have been the opposite.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think. Again, I don't know because I haven't dug into any of it, but benefit of the doubt kind of thing. If he has, how long was that show?
I think it was it an hour? Each candidate got
So if he has an hour, all right, if he's able to completely explain everything in an hour, then we're in big trouble.
It's not going to work.
No, do you know that his everyone keeps asking him, what are you going to do about the Middle East? And his answer is, I have a plan, but it's a secret. I mean, that he gave that answer yesterday. He's saying, I want to keep all my cards in my back pocket.
I guess I just wonder, and maybe saving it for the debates, maybe, I don't know, but I just wonder if there's any policy outlines on his website or something you can find. And again, I don't know. I do know that Hillary Clinton's a liar, and you can't believe anything she says, and she's crooked and evil. And I do believe we've touched on it on the show. I think she actually eats babies, but I'm not sure about that.
Well, one thing
you
that
think with hot sauce or
Neat, like
neat,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, neat,
Okay.
yeah.
Jesus still loves her.
That's that. You know what he
Jesus.
does. He
He
does,
does.
and
that
and
makes him a better man. than me.
I may even
Okay.
I may
Well,
even
he is a better man than all of us.
break down and pray for her, but
Exactly. That's what we need to
as
do. Seriously.
as David, me sitting here, the woman, I just can't do it anymore. I can't even listen to her voice anymore. It's very troubling that, you see poll results, and I think they're completely fake.
I'm positive they are.
There's no way that she's ahead in some of the areas.
And Trump has touched on that, right? Trump has brought that up numerous times
Yeah,
in interviews.
He's a numbers guy. But you know what? Another thing that blew me away is this debate was on MSNBC, which is the most unabashedly liberal news station
You ain't
out
kidding.
there. And the ticker underneath, as they were talking, the first thing that came across the ticker was that the poll right after the debate, Donald Trump was up 19 points.
Well, that's
with
keep in
veterans and
keep
things
in
like
mind
that.
too
Which
that
means that he was probably up 50 points.
Well, that's a good
and
point.
MSNBC is a network like CNN also is woefully short on ratings. I mean, they're imploding. So they're going to do whatever. I mean, if they need to be, they're sorry, they're such whores that I think they would just do whatever to get ratings.
Well, we're at a point now where it's pretty amazing to me. I watched a couple movies trying to get my facts straight and giving me, I don't believe other documentaries to be 100% accurate, but what I find is when I watch documentaries, they give me tidbits to research.
Sure, yeah.
I don't take it as gospel just because it's being said by someone that I have a modicum of respect for, but it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, that's where I start that. And I watched a couple documentaries and, just trying to bone up on things, and it's just amazing to me how the distrust of the media is way more rampant than I thought it was. And if we've touched on this in other shows, but it's like, okay, I have a decent sized circle of people I see on a relatively frequent basis. I have a lot of people in and out of my business, and they're customers for years. They're more like friends. We discuss politics and religion and these kind of things. I've got my group, and a lot of them are kind of like, I don't want to talk conspiracy. I don't want this and that. But in these documentaries, I'm seeing other people, and it's like everybody's like, how do you trust me? Oh, I don't trust the media at all. That's just person after person after person. I mean, I guess these are documentaries on,
Well, they've been exposed over and over again, especially in the last decade, probably as being complete phonies. I mean, literally, blatantly lying, caught in it.
Yeah.
And presenting the news as news when it's completely fake, and it's been exposed over and over and over to the point where even if you're on the right hand side of the aisle, you usually lean towards Fox News, right, as your source for news.
That's what I'm told.
It's Fox on one hand,
Right,
MSNBC
but
on the other. That's
even
CNN in the
as a
middle.
conservative, I can't stand Fox.
Well, you should not actually, because they're also in the same ballgame.
Yeah, they're lying.
They do the same stuff.
Just because they're lying and trying to slant things to the side I would prefer doesn't make it any less of a
exactly.
lie.
Yeah, it's still.
Let me make my own decisions.
Yeah,
Yeah, but first you have to have facts in order to make a decision. And
Right,
Yeah.
and we don't get them anywhere. Where do we get those?
Yeah,
I mean, not from our history books, not from what we're taught in school.
Yeah, and I won't say that there's no good journalists anymore. I think there are probably some very good ones,
I
but
agree.
they're rare, right? A true journalist.
Right. Andrew Breitbart was one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and
I'm not
but even
exactly sure what's happened after his death, but
it's that even they're even. I mean, it's very good. I tend to like their stuff, but and maybe I'm just cynical, but I'm always kind of like, really? I don't know.
I know you're not a big fan of the guy who was running it, who's now signed on, O'Bannon.
Oh yeah, Stephen K. Bannon. Yeah, he's the one thing I didn't like about him that turned me off about him is he was immediately dismissive of anyone who would bring up anything, even fact-based.
Right, that disagreed with his opinion.
Well, not necessarily that, but it would be anything what we would consider, or what not we would consider, but what people would consider maybe fringe. Like, let's say conspiracy, which even the stuff I heard him, balk at people about, it isn't conspiracy. It's like actual stuff.
Right.
And he would sit there and just dismiss, put on your tinfoil hat and, this. And that I didn't like. I didn't like that. It's like you can't just immediately dismiss.
No, you need to be open-minded, especially if you're in the news business.
Well, and you know what? That guy knows. The couple times I heard people call in, that guy knows that what those people are talking about is for real.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't want to suffer ratings by buying in, kind of. So.
I told you guys last week I started a Twitter account. So one of the guys I'm following is a guy you like too. And have you heard Mark Levin's latest presidential choice?
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised by that because
no, I'm not either.
It's the responsible thing to do.
Right.
Is to vote for Trump, in my opinion. I mean, that's just my opinion. But
right.
We have to do whatever we have to do to prevent Hillary Clinton from making it to the White House. There's no question about this. Zero option.
I heard a new scenario. And maybe it's not new to you guys, but it was new to me. I've heard in the last week that the reason why they're not indicting Clinton is because what the plan is that once she receives the No, it was you who was telling me, right?
I don't know.
If she gets elected, then Obama's going to indict her.
Oh, I heard that was a theory, right?
Yeah, to remain in the presidency, since she wouldn't be inaugurated, her vice president would not be a legitimate replacement.
If it happened in between that.
Between November and January.
Yeah, that was some theory that I had heard. I don't know that I suggested or buy into it.
I think anything is plausible. I will be shocked if we see anyone other than Hillary or Obama in the White House.
Well, let's hope so, man. The only good thing is there's another alleged big document dump coming from Julian Assange that is very, very.
God bless that man.
It's going to be very. Apparently, it's pretty heavy duty. So
nice.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea what the topics are? Or?
It's another email dump that apparently
from
is
Hillary
all her stuff that apparently is going to expose further that not only is she lying about not knowing the classification of documents or this, but really just blowing it open, just showing blatantly that she's just been lying, like completely lying, and actually telling people.
Will they even believe it then?
It doesn't at this point. I don't think so. I think it'll be chalked up as they're picking on her, like it has been so far. And poor Hillary, the queen of the crime syndicate. And its hands around America for a total crook, which is not unusual for this place. But
no, that's what I mean. All the stuff comes out that came out with the Democratic National Convention, and what does Obama do? Obama decides to focus not on the crimes they committed, trying to screw Bernie out of what was potentially his rightful nomination. No, he goes after. He wants to talk about the cyber safety and increase those emails were hacked. Those are secure servers. It's like,
they blamed it on the Russians.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But what about the content? What about what came out in that, Mr. Obama?
Yeah, it's pretty nasty stuff. And again, no love lost for me that a total communist didn't get the nomination. I'm fine with that. I don't care if he was mistreated.
Fine. But I mean,
who cares?
Due process is due process. If he was supposed to get the Democratic, if he was going to be the Democratic, choice for president, I mean, then he should have got it.
Well,
I don't like him any better than Clinton.
Again, that's something they need to work out, and it's a DNC issue. I don't know that it's really.
She even fights within her own party. She's amazing.
Well, she's a real piece of work, dude. The whole crew is really something. But their network is huge, man, and it's got a lot of money behind it and foreign interests behind it, and it's a gigantic monster.
Well, I've definitely, in watching the two, they both happen to be Alex Jones documentaries. So
I think Alex Jones is okay.
I like a lot of things about him. I've heard that these are a little bit older. These are a few years older. I heard people are concerned about the tone of some of his newer stuff. They think he's lobbing softballs and lightening up because of the gravity of his situation. But I like the guy. I find a lot of interesting stuff. I usually agree with him. So I watched one called Endgame, which was about basically New World Order, and then one called Obama, which was basically, and I just sat back and kind of nodded because everything I already thought about Obama was in this documentary. So for me, I was getting affirmation that my gut and what my research has told me was completely correct. But they were really good movies. And one of the things that really came to me in the movie is just everybody knows they're liars, and yet nobody calls them on it. We're just it's like, oh, they're lying again. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Well,
or
who's on American Idol?
it's good old fashioned deception. I mean, and it's like this: if you come out with blatant facts that are backed up, documented proof, something say about Obama. It's very quickly spun out of control where they're just picking on him. It's a race thing. It's this, this. And it's pretty easy to just discount it as fact for people who, I mean, without trying to sound insulting, can probably barely read. So, because you would never just fall for that if you really cared about what was going on in the country. You know what I mean? Regardless of who you're talking about. And I think it's, they go to great lengths to, I mean, just his affiliations alone that we know about. Really? These things are right in your face. They're right there to see. But people will still be like, no, that's just,
you know. You know what, Obama, and again, it's too late. It's too late.
It's way too late.
It's too late to stop Obama from being elected. I mean, I'm often procrastinate, but this would be ridiculous, right? But you know what his claim to fame was as a senator? The one major issue that he was a maverick of?
That's a great question. I don't know.
He wanted, I don't know exactly what it's called, but he voted in favor to allow abortion.
Oh, yeah. Partial birth abortions.
Partial birth. Say that 10 times fast.
Yeah.
Partial birth abortions.
Yeah, I did know that.
Literally, while they are delivering the baby,
right,
they can kill it.
Yeah, he voted for murder. There's no question about this.
And that was
not
his
the
big
only
thing.
one.
He was the swing vote.
Yeah.
That was his claim to fame. That was his. This is what you got to do for the cause, and we will make you the face of it.
Yeah. Well, it's that actual bill. I forget. I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know what's so sick about that is, I mean, obviously there's a lot of things sick about that, but Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, founded Planned Parenthood to eradicate black babies.
Well,
this is known, right?
It's eugenics.
It's like,
it's
wow.
eugenics
and they use, I know he's only half black, but they use a black guy to be the face.
Yeah,
of,
and it doesn't.
And it's not even a black and white issue. She just happened to be a racist, and eugenics fit into her racist plans.
Yeah, she.
But what it's about is it's basically Nazi Germany. Okay, I mean, Nazi Germany was about eugenics. Hitler just went a little crazy and made the eugenics people look bad, so they rebranded it.
I mean, he wiped out. Tried to wipe out a whole race of people.
Right.
So I mean, she referred to kids as weeds, and killing them is the best thing you could ever do to them. These quotes are famous; they're documented.
Yeah.
She's
a
well known for
person.
being, for being
Terrible.
just a disgusting human being. But it's really evil. I mean, it's
Pure
so evil that there's no way to even argue for that. I'm sorry, but people that try,
they do a lot of good though, right?
are just like,
I mean, they don't
I
just
guess,
do abortion, they do a lot of good.
I guess so. I don't know.
I couldn't see that face on the
that was that was kind of tongue in cheek.
Yeah, but it's a good point because it just goes to show you how deep the deception really goes with all of it, because they'll buy into things that was originally designed to eradicate them. Mm-hmm. And it goes on and on and on,
and it's just repackaged. I mean, they thought that the idea of socialist Russia was the powers that be think that's the way. That's the best way. Is if you have 90% of the population as poor slaves, and they'll become genetically enhanced superhuman, living eternal lives.
Well,
and that's where the whole thing goes. I'm as crazy as it sounds. That's the end game.
But eugenics, it's not unique to Nazi Germany, or
No.
I mean, we did it here.
Yes, we did.
We actually had an active eugenics program.
Yes, we did. Until Hitler made it look bad.
Well,
They were packaging it
Well, no,
differently
actually, they did it more
Made
recent
look
than that.
bad, as if it was.
No, we did it. We did it here way more recent than that, because there were still survivors of it that got paid like a form of reparations for the damages.
Really?
And this is like in the I forget when, but it was post World War II, because the survivors were within the last. This happened within the last 5 to 10 years. That they came forward, told their story, and
Well,
they literally would.
Like I said, the eugenics movement went underground and rebranded itself after Nazi Germany, because
They called it eugenics in the United States. This happened here, blatant.
I know,
right out in the open.
they did, but the whole movement went underground after World War II, and they just rebranded it.
Yeah, no, it was still called eugenics. It wasn't rebranded. They didn't try to hide it. It was the eugenics program here in the United States.
Wow.
In recent history. And they would literally pluck kids out of, if they were what they called, mentally challenged. I forget the words that they used back then that were really insulting. But they would take these girls and rip their ovaries out, dude. And castrate the boys. No doubt. Look it up. This really happened. And
Wow.
one of the women who survived this, was still living, went on to file some kind of lawsuit, and I think she got like $20,000. Sorry for your troubles. Go buy a used car. I mean, it's
she just
but
would have
this,
put hot coffee in her lap.
this kind of stuff is
Yeah.
far-reaching and actually still going on in other places. And now, we got our wonderful history of abortion here. So,
one of the things I saw, and then we can get off these movies. But one of the other things I saw, because it pertains to the kind of stuff we talk about, was that, I mean, I knew G-Dub was a scumbag. Okay, whether he can call himself whatever he wants, he's part of the problem. Okay, he's working for the same people. Just because he called himself a Republican and quoted the Bible, pretended to be conservative, he's not.
nowhere.
He's not. Look at what he did.
Yeah,
okay.
certainly not conservative. That's for sure.
What I did not realize, what was news to me, and I had a little bit of time to do some research on it, and from what I can find, it seems to be very, very credible. But I will put this disclaimer on this. According to Alex Jones, Bill Clinton was tight with Bush Sr. Bill and Hillary actually were vacationing with the Bushes prior to his presidency, and Bill's George Herbert Walker Bush would joke around and call him son.
I mean, it does not shock me one bit.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Does not shock me one bit. I mean, their policies are similar. I mean,
it really is. I mean, they're
W is the second biggest spendthrift president we've ever had, second to Obama.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, no, there's no doubt about this.
I mean, that really blew me away because, with all the infighting between the Republicans and the Democrat, and, Bill was very critical of the idea of G-Dub getting in. He wanted his boy to get in, the inventor of the Internet.
Well,
the guy who invented the Internet, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Soros.
Yeah, Al Gore.
Oh,
yeah.
Al Gore, okay. I worked in politics for 10 years. And you know what it reminds me of? The relational dynamic. You guys watch Bugs Bunny when you were a kid?
Of course, yeah.
Of
Okay.
course.
Do you remember the sheepdog and the coyote? They'd wake up in the morning together. Morning, George.
Dude,
morning,
it's-
Sam. And then they'd walk to work
Yeah, right.
together, and then they'd punch in, and they would beat the living crap out of each
Yeah.
other. And then they would clock out and go home and drink a beer together. That's exactly
Yeah,
what
it's professional
it is.
wrestling.
Exactly.
It's professional wrestling.
Yes,
We've made that comparison before where,
Yeah.
it's just exactly like that. They off camera, they're giving high fives and playing golf and whatever.
So, would we be better if we elected Vince McMahon president then?
He might be,
You'd make a better Secretary of State. Just kidding.
I don't know.
I mean, I vote for The Rock in a second.
Stone
Dude,
Cold.
given the choices we've been presented with, I mean, I'd go for Mr. T, dude. I mean,
There's a
That
campaign
would
to
be
write in
nice.
Ted Cruz that's starting to gain a little bit of momentum.
what's
I've
this now?
noticed. a campaign to write in Ted Cruz. I've seen it.
I can't spell it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, these could be, it's just like the other guy, the libertarian,
Gary Hart?
Gary Johnson.
Johnson, and all these,
Hart.
That could very well just be another ploy to get people to not vote for Trump, so that any means necessary to get Hillary in there, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. I know.
Well, the Gary Johnson thing is more about the future. I mean, it's like I don't know that anybody really thinks he could be elected, but the idea behind that is he actually has some really solid policy. I looked into him a little bit.
He's libertarian, so
and the deal is if he can get enough of the vote, I don't know what the percentage was they were shooting for, but if he can get enough of the vote, it's going to offer hope to future third-party candidates. So that's why the strong push for Johnson. No one expects him to really be elected. It's about trying to open up and make a viable independent. So it's not just.
I mean, I can see the
dog
logic in
and
that,
pony show.
but I can see the logic in the other side of it too. Is that if you think about it, anyone who would be inclined to vote for him as an alternative would probably vote Republican. I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of leftists voting for a libertarian because they just don't, they just don't think the same way.
Al's sitting over here shaking his head. I think we got to get Al to chime in on this because he was actually he actually brought a lot of enlightenment to me on Gary Johnson.
Yeah, he was talking about it last time we were 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
How you doing, Al?
Good. How are you guys?
Not bad. Sorry, I didn't mean to drag you into this.
No, that's fine. It's fine. Yeah, sitting here listening, I'm sitting like in the back going, oh, well, there's this and there's that. I honestly would have probably either, I hate to say this, but I probably initially would have either not voted at all or voted for Hillary. Just because I have, I'm not a bleeding heart liberal. I'm not a, super right-wing guy. I'm down the middle.
Yeah, right.
So my views do lean slightly liberal because of my love for people and people's well-being.
Because conservatives,
which is actually a misconception.
No, I don't. I
we
don't
hate
say
people.
that conservatives do. I say that conservative politicians do.
Yeah,
I don't think we
they
have
do.
any real
They
conservative
hate people.
politicians
They just
anymore.
can't stand them. But the liberal politicians, they love the people.
Because communism, socialism,
Well,
this is all about the people.
Hey,
The reason
that's
that I
what's for
jumped
dinner,
on here was not to jump into your overall political
We're
views.
we're just teasing you. Al. We're just teasing.
We got to razz you, man.
I do feel that my personal opinion is we have a broken system.
You ain't kidding.
There is a big boys club, and that involves everybody, although they present themselves on one side or the other.
Yep.
And the only way to fix that is either all-out revolt or a third party to become powerful enough to make them say, hey,
Right. We better get it
we
together.
better put ourselves in check for a while, because otherwise we are just going to get voted out of the picture.
And that's a point of view you gave to me. You either made your own Facebook post or commented on one I put up, and then you and I had a back and forth, and we've talked off air about it a few times, and I just hadn't looked at it that way. So I think because I'm always complaining to people about being responsible. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're not voting, I don't want to hear what you think about the president. Don't bitch about the president if you didn't vote.
Right.
Okay?
Well, that's a good point, too.
That is always my comment. My second, when someone wants to start complaining about an elected official, who'd you vote for? Oh, I didn't vote, man. I don't vote. Then shut up.
Then,
Because what are you doing about it? Okay? I get to complain because I go to every election and I pull a lever. And I thought the responsible thing to do was to bring up Al's point of view, because it makes a lot of sense.
No, he's dead nuts on.
Well,
he's dead nuts on the money with that, because you're right that there isn't even a two-party system.
No.
It's actually the unit.
No.
It's one.
Right.
And it's a mess.
And my whole push on Facebook was not necessarily to say, if you're not voting for Gary Johnson, you're wrong.
No.
It was just basically to say, if you don't know about Gary Johnson,
you need to find out.
Then you're not doing your job in researching everything possible.
Right. No,
Yeah,
I thought that was, I complimented you on it and thought it was,
because my
again,
fear,
it's the responsible thing to do.
my fear, man, my deep-seated fear, because I tend to be libertarian. I tend to be like a
That's probably where
conservative
I end up,
libertarian kind of a mix, right? But my fear is that if a person like Hillary Clinton gets in the White House, we may not have much of a future. In fact, there's no recovering from that, in my opinion. Zero. It's going to be hard enough. It's going to take 100 years to unravel the mess this last 8 years caused us.
Yeah.
So we need to kind of start now.
To be fair, the last 16.
Of course.
You know,
but I mean,
a lot of the problems with Obama's administration started under Bush.
Well, it goes back since, the last real anyone can even consider a good president in recent times was Reagan.
Yeah. It all
And
started
since then,
under
it's
George
been
Sr., yeah.
Garbage.
I love that, and again, I'm not a social economics history buff or a political history buff, so I couldn't tell you. I hear a lot of, and it's basically it's a lot of my like way right wing friends. You know what I mean? And I have friends of all. I don't get on anybody about it, but a lot of them say the same thing. Like, well, Reagan was our last great president, and then I see some other stuff that says, well, really, because Reagan did this, Reagan did that, and to me, and I guess what you just agree with me that when we believe that there is no more two-party system anymore, it's a big boys club. But then when you say if one person gets in office, we're screwed. To me, I'm one of those disenfranchised voters where I say no matter who gets in office, we're screwed. And so that's why I'm like, all right, we need other options at this point.
Right,
Yeah,
and that's that again, that you are making a responsible choice, in my opinion, rather than refusing to vote. Because until we came up with some of the stuff that we've seen recently, and until you and I talked about it, I wasn't going to vote. I would never, in a million years, I don't care if I all of a sudden woke up one morning and was the most liberal person in the world, I still would not vote for Hillary Clinton.
Well, and here's the other part of that,
She's
too.
a despicable person.
Yeah.
Everybody uses scare tactics when it comes to election time. And so
Agreed.
right now, my own father actually sent me a text one night, like, angry at me because I posted stuff about Johnson. He's like, you do realize that if you vote for Johnson, you're taking votes away from Trump, and that's going to put her in office.
No, because you wouldn't vote for Trump.
Well, that was what I did. Was I went online and again, this is all you can only believe what you can believe. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to get so much information, and half it's false. And you don't know what's true or not. You don't know until it actually plays itself out.
Right.
What is the truth? But I sent him two separate articles that showed that Johnson was actually polling equally, pretty much from both sides.
I would
So
believe that.
and then that's that end of it. Then I've also seen articles that say that Johnson is, literally both sides completely evenly. Johnson is just a ploy by the Republicans to pull votes away from Hillary. And I see the same article, you flip-flop, where Johnson is just a ploy of the Democrats to pull votes away from Trump. All you can do is do whatever you can so you can sleep at night.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
And so if you believe, and this is the final argument I had with my father, I was like, listen, I have to vote with my heart, otherwise I'm not doing my job. Yep. That's the reason we have a vote. The vote is not to avoid electing this person. Right. The vote is so many people vote with their heart and this person gets elected.
Right.
And so I refused, and that's what I told him. He was like, well, you have to vote. I said, I don't. I served my country. I served my country, and those that died before me died, so I have a choice of whether or not I want to vote and who I vote for. There's countries where you're required to vote.
Right.
So it's really I hate this time because it's like I don't know what to believe anymore, and all you can do is research what you can and vote with your heart.
And vote with your conscience. Absolutely. Yep. I agree with you, but I think, again, you're not pulling, your vote is not coming from Trump.
Right.
Because you wouldn't vote for him.
Right.
And I believe, with what I know of you, that you wouldn't vote for Hillary either. You'd stay home.
And it's not that I don't think that it's possible that Trump, I believe in all possibilities.
Sure, me too.
Reagan, as you said, was one of our best presidents, or at least our most recent great president, was an actor. You know what I mean? So what is anything that has to do with the past necessarily going to affect the future? I mean, are these patterns going to? Yeah, Trump filed bankruptcy 6 times with his businesses.
Right.
So, but that is a survival thing. He knew to do that to
Right.
to maintain. So,
And he's obviously had more success than failure because he is a billionaire.
I will say, with the son in the military right now, I do not want Clinton in office. I will say that, but I refuse as an American, as a veteran, I refuse to vote against somebody instead of voting for somebody.
No, and that and I, like I said, I have no issue with that. I think that what you come up with, again, I hate to beat a dead horse and go Hegelian dialectic, but
You said that very quickly.
I think it's the I practiced. I think it's the responsible thing because, again, I was so disenchanted with everything that's going on that I'm going to take my shit from the sandbox and I'm going home, man.
Right.
And the more you think about it, I'm a reasonable person. I love this country. I believe in this country. I believe in people. I love people. And that's actually the most responsible thing to do is to research. And if you're not going to vote for number 1 or 2, then find 3 or write in somebody.
Right.
But staying home from the polls is not the responsible thing to do. In this country, you have a right to make that choice.
I see, and I slightly disagree with that, and I've got one more quick point. I don't want to eat up your show.
Feel free. We're free for
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's
Please
better.
do.
I think it's better that people that aren't going to educate themselves and not going to do research don't vote.
That's a
Because
really
you have
valid
people-
point.
That's an
You
excellent
have people
point.
like my mother back a few elections ago. I just happened to ask her, I'm like, who are you planning on voting for? And she said, well, I'm voting for this person because they're against abortion. And my mom's a little more religious than I
Yeah.
am and whatnot. I'm like, okay, well, what else do you like about them? Well, I don't know. I just like that. I'm like, Ma, you got to listen. There are things you are at the time, probably she was 55. I said, you are not having any more kids. Your kids are done having kids. Let's talk what's going to affect you immediately,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, with that being said, it's called isidewith.com, and it's a survey.
I did it.
Yeah,
I
and
was like 300% Trump.
It's
Really?
amazing though when
I
you
was high Trump.
when you get done and you realize like you're still 50% of the stuff was like with Hillary, and 50% of this, like for me, it was 50 something Hillary, 60 something Trump, and 83% Johnson or something like that. But it's still. There's still blanket policies that you'll fall under where you'll be like, you will side with Hillary because
I sided
it's
with
a
Hillary
blanket
on 0,
policy.
but my 2 guy was Johnson. There were several categories. I don't remember the exact number. I joke, but if I wasn't with Trump, I was with Johnson. There were several categories where it was really close.
Right, and I put that out there a lot because, like I said, an uninformed voter is the most dangerous
No,
voter.
you're not kidding.
So I try to tell everybody, listen, go to this site. It'll take you 10 minutes. It gives you, say, 4 questions about the environment, and then it has an option underneath to answer more. Answer all the questions
Yeah.
you can.
Yes.
If you're not sure what a question means, just skip it. But at the end, it tells you who you really side with. You probably don't even realize who you side with. Do that real quick. Take 10, 15 minutes out of your life
That's
to know.
isidewith.com.
isidewith.com.
We got to add that.
Interesting.
We got to add that.
I'll
to
check it
the-
out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a few now. I've seen like 2 or 3 more circulate. But yeah, it gives you a great.
No, I did that one, and I had a lot of fun with it, and no surprise, I came out on the conservative side. But there were several social issues, where I sided with Johnson over Trump.
Right, and you can also gauge how important that issue is to you on
Yes.
that. So if it's something that you feel this way about it, but you don't really care about that issue, then you can lower
leave it
the,
neutral or lower
Yep.
it. Yep.
So-
Interesting. I'll check it out.
It was pretty thorough, and he's right. You can go through and just do the idiot questions, or you can answer more. And I did my best to answer everything they threw in front of me. I was at work. I was already getting paid, right?
Right.
And
Best time to do it.
it was very thorough. I thought it was a great survey, and I enjoyed it.
Right
Yeah,
on.
just
Check it out.
Just get out there and find it. Like I said, that's why I threw Johnson out there. So many people. He should be in the debates.
Yeah.
He should be in the debates. People should. That's the
Well, if
only
he's a
way-
viable candidate, he should absolutely be in the
Yes,
debates.
and the only way he's going to hit those people that aren't
gotta get a
looking
number.
around on the internet, and that is to get on TV on those
agree.
debates. So
Yeah.
Is his website GaryJohnson.com, or do you know what the website is?
I have no idea.
You can find it.
I'm
for
sure.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, look up for those of you out there doing research. We're light on topics to research today, unless you're going to watch Alex Jones movies. Go check out Gary Johnson. If you're kind of middle of the road, kind of conservative leaning, but a little more liberal on social issues, go check it out because he's a good guy. He's put a lot of thought into this, and what the heck.
He was a Republican, by the way. He was elected.
Yeah, he was. Yes.
He said their little tag is that they're fiscally conservative and socially liberal.
Well, that's a nonsense statement, but okay.
Right.
There's no such thing. You're conservative or you're not.
No, that's not true.
That is
because
true.
I disagree with you because I used to be a social libertarian and a fiscal conservative. Because if you're a social libertarian, what you're saying is it's your body, it's your life, do what you want as long as it doesn't affect me.
But you're not conservative if you think that.
I
fiscally
said
conservative.
You can't separate when you separate it out. This creates confusion.
I said social libertarian, not social conservative.
Well, remember,
I said I was
we're
a
dealing
fiscal
with that whole
conservative and a
sliding
social
scale.
libertarian, and it is possible. To do that.
It's a little when you start separating out like that, it confuses the issue, and then it dilutes what
I think
conservatism really is.
You can be socially liberal as for your own rights to do things, other people's rights to do things, and then when it comes to fiscal responsibility, how the government is spending money, then you can be fiscally conservative.
Yeah, I don't see
So
where
I think it's
socially liberal gives people freedom.
Libertarian is different from liberal.
Yeah, I understand that. But
Yeah.
it's basically saying, hey, we're middle of the road people,
which is conservative.
I guess.
It's right down the center. Constitution, baby, right there.
Again, I don't know enough to argue that statement. So.
It's been complete. The definitions have been changed so that people don't really understand what it means. But
that's the whole point, isn't it? That we've been so, colluded with just and what you guys were talking about earlier with the information that's out there and people knowing what to believe. I feel like that's the best thing that they've been able to accomplish is to just flood so much. Yeah. True and false information
yep.
that you're left with too many choices of what is the truth. And so, I mean, they're doing a great job.
Oh, they've totally succeeded, in my opinion.
And in certain instances, we've talked about this on other shows, they don't teach cursive writing anymore. How old are your kids? You've got kids, right?
Yeah, well, the boys are older out of the house. My daughter's 12. So.
Okay. So I've got a 9-year-old. Mm-hmm. They will never know how to read cursive writing. They don't do it.
Right.
How are they ever going to be able to read the Constitution for themselves? How are they ever going to be able to read the Declaration of Independence? It's all written in cursive.
Right. Well, that's...
So what they'll see is they will see reproductions of it where words are changed and sentences are truncated.
Right.
Right. But it's gotten to the point where if you talk about the Constitution, you're radical.
Well,
which
you
is
radical.
But I'm not. Which is, that's the thing. That's what they've succeeded in doing. When the Constitution is directly down the center, it is moderate. That was the whole purpose of it. But when you want to restore it and stop them from shredding it, which they've basically done, you are some kind of right-wing, fanatic. When really that's completely false.
Well, they've been twisting it both ways.
Well, they've been working hard on it.
Either side can twist the Constitution to support their argument, and that's why. Is it Levin that has the Constitutionalist Party, or was that the other guy?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, which one was it? It was one of the serious hosts,
sure.
Patriot Channel guys.
Either him or Wilcow.
Might have been Wilcow. It's either Levin or Wilcow, where they're constitutionalists and they're starting a whole movement to pay attention to the Constitution. Let's look at the Constitution. Let's figure it out. Let's go
Levin,
from there.
Mark Levin for sure.
Yeah, I think it's Levin.
He's written
I think
some fantastic books. That
dude is super smart.
If you read them, you'll realize that, wait a minute, what's been happening here is, boy, have they done a number on this country, dude. Done a number on it.
And it's both sides. It's just both sides down the middle, and so much of that has become clear to me the more I research to try and make an informed decision based on the future of my child, of my grandchildren, of my nieces and nephews. Man, have they been pulling it over on us for
big time.
For the last 20-some years?
100 at least.
Well,
plus.
Yeah, but I mean it's gotten blatant.
Yeah. Yeah, you see what it's done. We're in great shape.
Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is
we're in great shape.
People say like, "Oh, you have so many options. You can write your senators. You can do all this stuff." Anything short of a few million people showing up at the White House armed and ready to die. I mean, honestly, we're at that point. We have no power anymore. You can write till you're blue in the face. You can, get on social media and do what you want. And it's not wrong to do that. It's not necessarily a waste of your time. You're still voicing your.
But it moves at a glacial pace.
Yes, and that's why I said earlier, our only two options are revolt or, bring in another party. We are basically, they have tied our hands so well that anything short of a revolution is ineffective.
Well, there's one thing that's there. It's Article 5 Convention of the States, which is put in the Constitution for this very reason. And that's all we really need to do, and no violence involved. But they will do everything to block that because it literally will put the federal government back in its place.
Right.
And if they actually, and there are states that are trying to get this going, and the big warning is, well, it'll be a runaway, but that's all propaganda. I mean, the founders and the framers, they put that in there for this very reason, because they knew what they were doing when they constructed that document, and they knew what people would do with it, and it is the way out. It is the only way out that is actually legal. And that's really all you need to do. And if they were
what happens with if you enact Article 5, what do you do?
Well, it's and I can't quote all of the details, but a certain number of states has to be involved in it, and it literally would be to halt everything, and they could amend the Constitution, they could get things back in order the way it's supposed to be. They literally could write a new one. But something.
It'll have to be the governors of the states.
Which that's the point, is because the states, what most people don't realize is that the states actually have more authority than the federal government by design, but they no longer do.
Right.
So you see what's happened in the European Union, where governors in the United States have more authority than prime ministers now.
Right.
And that's what they're trying to do here. And basically make a governor like they're, they don't do anything without answering to the, they centralized everything. But these guys knew this would happen. They knew that there's no balance anymore. We have, the judges are activists now, and the whole notion, you see how far it's gone. The whole notion that, when the Supreme Court makes a ruling that it's the law of the land, nothing could be more false. They don't write law. They do not. They are not a legislative body. The people we elect from the states are. But they've raped them of all that. They've usurped all that authority. And the only way to really stop it without violence, because keep in mind, there's a lot of people that really talk about revolution like it's something we should do. But I would remind people that the American Revolution was a very unique set of circumstances.
Yeah, I by no means sponsor revolution.
No, I'm not saying that, but people do.
I mean? Yeah.
People do. And that word revolution gets thrown around a lot. And the fact of the matter is most revolutions do not end the way that the people who planned it thought it would. Right? The American Revolution was a very different animal. Yeah. And it happened to work out. And actually, it was the most successful experiment in government that's ever taken place.
Well, and that's because, the only reason the American Revolution worked is because everybody was pissed at England.
You know what, though? It took a very long time, though, man.
I know, it did.
Most people were like, no, we're.
But without the French and the Spanish and the other countries that got involved and supported the American Revolution, they never would have done it on their own.
It was.
They totally did not do that on their own.
It was very tough. And keep in mind, when we talk about this document and you learn about it in school, what they don't necessarily make a point to teach is that when those people put their signature on that piece of paper, they literally signed their own execution order. If it would not have succeeded, they would have been hung for signing that document. So that's what they were putting on the line.
To sign that document.
That's what they were putting on the line. So it's a document that we need to pay attention to, and we need to take time to read it. It's not very long, and understand that until we restore that, This is not the United States of America.
And then you have, when you do enact that, then you have those same people that are, hey, Governor, Smith from such and such state, how would you like $5 million? You know what I mean? So all of a sudden now they're starting to get into that, and what they'll do is take over that movement to essentially give themselves even more power than they had.
Well, they've done it already with block grants. So
Right.
they've done it already. Where if the state, the Obamacare is a perfect example. If a state was saying, no, we're not adopting this, because essentially the state had the authority to do this, they just said, well, we'll just hold all your block grants. And since we've turned over the education system to the feds, like literally everything, states run on block grants.
Right.
So it's total. They could just say, well, you're not getting your, and they cave, of course, because honestly, it's so upside down that I don't know that the state could recover from that on their own, because of how bad it's gotten.
Would you agree that there would have to be, like, we are going to have to endure some real horrible times in order to move forward in a positive direction? Like, it has to get worse first. So, for instance, somebody has to stand up and say, fine, we don't want your block grants. And that state suffers for so long. You know what I mean? Like, I just see that in the future. Like, the only way that we're going to regain control of our country is they are going to make us suffer.
Yeah.
Oh,
until they can no longer do that, and we can regain control.
Yeah, no, it'll be sacrifice.
And the amount of suffering is unfathomable
Right.
to this generation.
And it
to any of us.
it could actually get to a point where people are being killed.
Yeah.
I mean, it could get that. It could be blood in the street. It could get that bad. But you always hear this. It's going to get worse before it gets any better. It's like that is actually true. I don't think that it would be this happy-go-lucky kind of
Right.
thing. But it's just, I guess you have to measure it. You have to weigh it. Like, okay, how valuable is liberty? How important is liberty? And I don't believe that most people even understand what it's like to not have liberty.
Right.
At least in this country, right? There are people in the world, obviously, and you look no further than countries we deal with on a regular basis, like China, Russia. These places where liberty is still a dream, and here we're literally giving it away.
Yeah.
And that's something that you have to weigh out for yourself and your family. Is okay. Well, how important is liberty and maintaining it, and what are you willing to do to be free? Because if you give that away, which we're doing, in exchange for falsehoods and fake things and things that are just, it's like this, this kind of emotion, happy-go-lucky kind of stuff that really doesn't amount to anything, in exchange for your liberty, then when it's gone, then it doesn't matter what you think anymore.
Well, unfortunately, too, it's being given away by most unknowingly. So people don't even realize. All right, so you guys obviously you do more research than I do. I'm just now starting to open up to things.
It's it's mostly because of this show.
The politics part is what got me into this stuff because
But I used to look at things and I'd see these, the odd story once in a while that's an eye-opening story, and I'd be like, yeah, whatever. That's crap. That's fake. It's not, it's not real. It's just lies. It's just someone trying to make money, and unfortunately, because they've done such a great job of controlling our media and everything that gets put in front of us, so many people are in that same mode. And it, like I said, for me, it's just been about the last year and a half that I've been kind of realizing what was going on. And yes, we're giving away our liberty, but most people don't even realize it.
Yeah, it's to the point now where a lot of it's just being taken because things are being done without our say so. We literally have no say anymore in what the government does.
Right.
Where before, the states were. That's why it's called the Union, because it is not one big glob of America.
Right, they've turned us into one country. We were like. We're more like Europe prior to the European Union. I mean, we are 50 different states that have chosen to work together as a country for the benefit of all 50 states.
Yeah, the Constitution essentially is a contract.
Yeah.
And that keeps the Union right together. But, this is what and you can see this happening because it's so huge, monolithic now that I don't really think it can be stopped. But the government and anything, companies, anything you allow to get to a certain size will literally become a living, breathing organism.
Yep.
And what do living, breathing organisms
Survive,
do
baby.
to no end is they will do whatever they can do to survive and to grow, to reproduce, whatever, right? Well, the government has become a living thing. And anytime you try to go after any part of it, it's going to fight because we've allowed it to get out of control in exchange for things that we could do for ourselves, essentially. So now, to get it back is darn near impossible. Not impossible, but wow. Like what you said a minute ago, it is going to take a very large sacrifice on our part. And I believe it's worth it because I've been places where people don't have things like liberty. And it's very sad to see because there's no opportunity there. There's no
hope.
There's zero anything. I mean, you take it to the nth degree with a system like what China has, where you don't own anything really. You don't really have any. You can't speak your mind. You can't. You go to jail for giving somebody a Bible.
Right.
Now, whether or not you are a Christian or not is beside the point. It could literally be a book that you wrote about your weekend. You see what I mean is that when they can start controlling, they dehumanize human beings and treat you as, you're not Howard, your Social Security number, something,
right?
And tied, and that's why they focus so much on the individual when really, individual liberty was really they boiled it down to the what's the biggest minority? The largest minority is the individual. It could be white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, but the largest minority is the individual, and the easiest minority to oppress and persecute. And that's really the purpose of what they tried to accomplish. And that's why I lean more libertarian in a lot of things, because we have private property rights here. Most people don't even consider this as one of the most important things we have. Is private property rights, where when you own something, it is yours.
Right.
And they're even starting to chip away at that. And it's just, people just want to go on and on with just leave me alone, and
they've found the formula that works. And when they find a formula that works, they're going to keep reusing it over and over and over and over again until it doesn't work, and then they'll find a new formula. Because the same formula they've used to get us to fall into line on other things, the block grants and stuff like that, now they're starting to use grants and tax status against the church.
Yeah, that's on its way hardcore.
I mean, there are several states going on right now where they are requesting the last 30 to 90 days of your sermons to find out what you're talking about in the pulpit. I mean, that's insane, Christian or not. No matter where you fall, that's censorship, man.
Well,
and if they start with the Christians, a popular group, it's the only group you're allowed to be prejudiced against. Is the Christians right now? They're the whipping boys, but man, that's censorship, because the second they get rid of Christian ideals, then they're going to be on something else next. Then it's going to be anti-government. It's going to be anti-something else, and they're going to start taking away the stuff that other people value. Censorship is wrong no matter what they're censoring.
Yeah, and it goes even. This could literally be under the threat of imprisonment. I mean, it can go that far.
Yeah.
And if they threaten, why would they need transcripts of sermons when what they're preaching? Every person in this country is no further away than 50 feet from a Bible at any given time.
Are they?
I don't care where you are. So they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Are they masking this with an overall all religion thing where they can say, well, we want to make sure that there's no radical Muslim heretic or whatever that's
no, because they're trying to get rid of the next on the block is going to be Islam. Because they're basically what they're trying to do is get rid of any religion right now and create a new one,
Right.
where we are basically worshiping the one world government.
Well, the state is God.
The state becomes God. They're trying to get rid of all
Right.
free thinking, free will religions. Islam is next. So you can sit back all you want and laugh at what's happening to the Christian church in America, but right now Islam is king. They're going to get you when they're done with us.
Right. I mean, and that's there's, of course, what we talk about on this show, there's underlying forces
Because
at work
I may disagree with some Islamic views, but I would never ever support anyone who wanted to censor it. They have every right to their opinion, and they have every right to their religion.
Well, once the government starts going after them, you already know that there's something up.
Right.
And it's just, that you already know. So there's,
Right.
like you said, there's always somebody next in line. So after that, then what do you just start censoring the Hindus, and then you're going to go after the Buddhists, and then what, the Taoists?
Then
If you have any belief other than the
they'll start
state.
censoring the atheists, and then we'll have big trouble.
Well, I mean,
'Cause that's
they actually
the vocal minority.
they actually like the atheists because that leaves the door open for
For the state,
statism to be
right.
their religion, because statism has become a religion. When you look to the state as God, which a lot of people do, they glean to the government for solutions for everything, when really government is what has put us in this predicament
where you
in the
need
first
solutions.
place.
Yeah.
And the whole point of going after the church is because they label it as anti-discriminatory, right? So if you're talking about gay marriage, you're talking about the gender bathrooms or whatever, anything that makes anyone feel uncomfortable, then they would go after your tax-exempt status, which would literally make most churches fold, because they hang on by a thread anyway. These are just supported by the members that go there. And then that will make Satan smile, because that is ultimately his goal. And he'll use the government and whoever else to make this happen. So, there's more going on than you can see, and it is actually so big that you can't see it unless you really start looking at it.
You can't. It's hard to step far enough away to get a view of it because it's so huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I have young kids, right? So I look at, my 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 12-year-old. My oldest is almost 21. And thinking about, if we have this much time, they end up having kids, what really, I mean, how much liberty are these at the pace we're going? How much freedom are these kids really going to have? How much liberty are they going to have? I mean, are they even going to be able to choose what they do for a career? Because a lot of places, they don't even choose what they have for a career. Right. They're tested as young kids, and they put into a program. You're going to be a toolmaker, or you're going to be a software guy, or you're going to be a doctor, and that's it.
And that's what
you're going to do.
Well, they have to find the balance, because my belief is that what they want is you to believe that you have just enough liberty to go to work and come home and be content. So what they do is they throw it in front of you as, oh, you have freedoms. You have freedom to move. You have freedom to do this and that. But you don't make enough money to become successful. You make enough money to get by, and you're grateful for it. And you're grateful that you don't live in Africa and your day is spent chasing food so you can eat that day.
Sure.
So that is most likely, the way I believe, is that is what the future is going to hold. Just enough pacification to keep people from rebelling.
Yeah, and really the only thing, in my mind anyway, that even it provides us with any chance whatsoever to break through this whole social engineering disaster that's been going on in this country for the last 100 years is the fact that Americans still have this kind of baked in rebellious nature where, we're really quick. If anyone comes to us with something we don't agree with, even on an individual level, whether at work or at a party or at a bar or wherever, we're pretty quick to give somebody the finger and be like, screw you, man. No, that is not right. I don't agree with you. We may make up and be friends afterwards, but I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not really passive. And we haven't been completely tamed yet. And I think that little bit of fire that's left is the only hope humanity globally has, because once you squelch that, which I believe they're trying to do, they can literally do whatever they want. And what are you going to do about it? Because when it comes down to it, in some of these places now, if you do what we're doing right now,
die.
Right.
You are going to prison, and you will probably disappear, and they'll come get your family, fine them for whatever. I mean, it literally would do this under the threat of being executed. And that is, and people, that would never happen. Really. It would never happen. Why would you say something like that when it's you think that there's something different about us as people than those people that live under these circumstances, when there's really not. The fact of the matter is that got out of control, and you had, tyranny. Tyranny is the enemy of liberty. You can't have both. You cannot have both. One absent, the other one's present. And that's just, there's no middle ground there. You can't have like tyrants kind of getting along with free people. It just doesn't work that way. They're opposite. And that's why it's important, that you try to get up to speed on it yourself and make sure your kids realize what a very special place they live in. And they're trying to take it from us every single day. Yep. These people don't take time off. They don't take a break. They're constantly trying to get more power and more everything, more control, and then selling it as, because I'm for the little guy. I'm looking out for the people. I'm looking out for the middle class, which is interesting because the concept of a middle class is a Marxist idea. Most people don't even know that. We don't have classes in America. It's fluid. You could be a janitor one day and a millionaire the next. There's no class system here. That's old news. It doesn't jive with our system. The idea of classes was penned by guys like Marx, which those ideas led to the slaughter of tens of millions of people as recently as the late 50s.
Yeah, there was in one, and I'm going to say this, and then we're going to go to break. They added up the Russian Revolution, the Mao Zedong, Uganda, all the major revolutions that have happened in the last, since the 50s, 150 million people killed.
50 million alone in China.
Yeah,
in the
150
50s.
million.
This happened while we were listening to the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
50 million.
Yep.
So
we're going to leave you with that.
Stalin.
We are going to change up the topic when we get back a little bit. Thank you, Al, for sitting in.
Yeah, dude, that was cool. We haven't talked about stuff like this.
Don't feel like we beat on you too much because we're just teasing.
No, we're friends.
We're going to let Kenny pay a couple bills because that's what Kenny does, and we will be back. Welcome back to Down the Rabbit Hole. I'd like to thank the boss, Al Isaacson, once again for sitting in and letting us go off on a tangent about the Constitution and all those fun things. I'm back here with Dave, Cat, and Kenny, and I want to talk about, Cat brought up a great topic. I want to spend our last hour, 45 minutes, because we went a little over break, talking about that. And Cat's topic is common misconceptions about Christianity. The things that a lot of people think that are absolutely incorrect, and I know we all suffered from them because I'm seeing plenty of them melt away now that I've chosen a side to join the war. But I think it's an excellent topic, and I'd like to spend the rest of the show talking about that.
Yeah, it can go deep. That's a big topic.
So what are some of the general questions, since you guys have become Christians, that your unbelieving friends or family have typically had for you? Do you see a common theme? Does it feel to you like people are stuck on certain issues, or?
I think I don't know, a common one that no one I really know has, but
me either.
But I've heard this a lot, and I have heard people say this, but how can and this I think is misunderstood, obviously. How can a loving God command the Israelites to go wipe out entire populations of people?
Yeah.
This is he killed everybody with the flood, right? That's one, and that's a really, to peel back the layers of that could take a while, but I think that's a big topic. But it's a one I think you hear a lot.
Sure.
Yeah, that's
I think
that's
it's
one of the major ones. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, I hear that one a lot. It goes
goes along those lines. Why would a loving God allow famine and pestilence and people to suffer, children to suffer in Africa.
That's another one too. Like, what's
Yeah.
up with bone cancer in children? I heard
Yeah.
some actor say this.
Yeah.
So basically, it's if God is good and God is great, then why is all this?
What's all this
pain and
nonsense?
suffering?
Yeah.
I
What's with leukemia? That kind of stuff.
Sure. I mean, I really struggle. I think every Christian struggles with that. I know I did when I first got saved. And, I think that once I started to understand, one thing that people don't consider is that God is sovereign, okay? I mean, God's will is his sovereign will. He's going to do whatever he wants to do. But the thing is that in the book of Romans, in chapter 3, verse 23, it says that we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That means every single living, breathing person that has ever walked on this earth is a sinner. And, God he gives all kinds of opportunities for us to come to him. He, the biggest way he demonstrates proof of his existence is, look at a beautiful sunset. And that does absolutely fit with science. And, you guys talk about the scientific part of it. I mean, science
Beauty
is
of
basically
childbirth. What?
It's the study of God's knowledge. That's the study of how, people think if I can't square up science with Christianity, then one's got to be true and one's got to be false. But anyways, back to, why those things happened. I mean, if you do the research on the cultures that were destroyed back then, we're talking about cultures who were living like ISIS. Okay, we're talking about cultures who were sacrificing babies to false gods, Baal and I can't remember.
Moloch.
Moloch. I mean, so if you really boil it down and you really look into
and the same people,
we would want those people dead today. I guess that's my point.
Right, and the same people that are so disgusted by the fact that the Israelites wiped out all the ites, mites, and dites.
All the ites.
These people were like, Iraq War, yeah.
Well,
it's like, I mean, what do you think we were doing over there?
Exactly.
Yeah, and there's another aspect of it too, especially pre-flood, that what's with you start there. And we'll go into this really deep. I think on our show we're going to do a couple shows about the flood, which I can't wait for because I love that. But
that's your gig.
But I would argue, based on Genesis 6, that most of the quote unquote people that were wiped out weren't actually human.
Okay.
So there's that aspect of it.
Right.
And the rest were corrupt beyond all belief. I mean, that's, literally there was only 8 people left that were worth anything. And if you do math on it, it could be, the population could have been in the billions.
Right.
Who knows?
Sure. And, I also think, that still doesn't speak to, things like cancer and stuff like that. But, that's where you have to understand, again, Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. I'm not saying that people deserve to die of cancer. I myself almost died 3 years ago. Okay, not from cancer, but from a disease. But I reached out to God. And, here I sit only by his grace and his glory. However, I feel like if he did not choose to heal me, he still used that to bring me to him, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes I don't think God creates, bad things in our lives. I think maybe sometimes he allows things to happen, just the way the two of you are fathers, right? You have children.
Yeah.
So you're going to allow your kids to make some mistakes because that's the only way they're going to learn, right? And so I do think that sometimes he allows us to suffer in certain ways because he wants us to see him. And it took him to bring me to my knees, guys. I mean, I weighed 90 pounds, right? I don't know that I would have came to Christ any other way, you know?
Your issues were an opportunity for him
to glorify himself.
Exactly.
Well, and, there's another aspect of it, too. With situations like with your mother, losing her, tragically, unexpectedly, same with my brother. Right. You ask these questions like, why? Why would he was a good dude? Mom was, she was Christian, right? She was a church-going woman,
no doubt.
Right? So there's no question in your mind as a kid who God was. Right? So, you figure your mom would live to be 100, whatever, But there's another aspect of it is why would these things happen? And I heard somebody say this before. I can't remember who it was. And it may have even been Pastor Aaron, but it made a lot of sense to me. Is you know, like I can speak for my own experience, right? Why would he, number one, allow that to happen to my brother?
Mm-hmm.
But then secondly, knowing what it would do to me, why would he put my family through that? Now, the other way to look at it is you know, this, and this is where a lot of people don't, it's hard to understand because human understanding, shock to some people, is very limited. I mean, we know very little, even the most intelligent of us. So we may not ever understand or get these answers, right? But if you are put in that situation and come out of it, how else would you be prepared to help somebody else
Right.
who is going through the same thing? I mean, that, you know, I mean, that's because really to help our fellow man is another one of the things that we're actually mandated to do.
Sure, absolutely.
So how could you,
Hey,
if you didn't have that experience that you had, if you knew somebody who's sick, if you've never been sick, you're just healthy as a horse, you can't relate.
Exactly. Suffering creates empathy. I mean, you have
And
empathy
strength.
towards people who
And strength.
you know, have lost a very, you know, you lost your brother.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, wow, young.
Yeah, he's 35 years old, you know, and now if I know somebody, I meet somebody, and this has happened to me already,
you just
Exactly.
recently.
where a similar circumstance, now I am prepared
Exactly.
to help that person. Because keep in mind, this life here, what Dave always calls the skin suit, right? It is, and that is absolutely accurate. This isn't actually real. What's real is what's to come.
Right.
And so what goes on here is for God's purposes. We don't understand.
Training.
It really is. And then you look at it too, like a child, right? Sick child. The suffering is horrible. It's horrible, and you can't say that the kid deserves it.
Right.
You know, but if you have a young child who dies from some terrible disease, I think that with 100% certainty that young child is going to end up in heaven, and that is the end result of this
whole
existence
thing,
here, right?
Doesn't make it any easier to deal with, but
It doesn't. And in our minds, it's wrong, right? In our minds, it's like, this is horrible. You would think if it's just like you wouldn't give your kid cancer. But we also don't have the understanding of what is beyond this world either.
We don't know the end game.
Exactly.
I mean, if you allow your kid to stub his toe to keep him from breaking his leg,
right?
I mean, we don't understand. We don't get the whole end game.
No.
And I'm positive. I mean, in retrospect, looking back on it for 14 years, next year will be the 15th anniversary. Looking back on it, I am positive that I would have found a way to screw up my engagement to my wife. I think that the reason, I really think, and it wasn't because of my mom, it was me. Okay, I think I would have found a way. I was just too effed up. And during that, I just put everything in God's hands.
Yeah.
I put everything. I wasn't 100% in yet, but I'm like, look, I'm just going to put this in your hands. I am too grief-stricken and weak to handle this. You guide me. You decide. Hey, brother. And you carry me through this. And look what I got out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what I'm doing now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and then you've met my wife and child.
Yeah.
Pretty much awesome.
Yep.
I don't deserve them. They were given to me.
Right.
And I'm just positive that it couldn't coexist. My mother had health issues. She had faith. She was a wonderful person, but she was struggling in her own way, and it was her time. She had struggled enough. It was time. It was time to go. I was a man. Let me move on.
I had an experience today where I went to court with some friends of mine for support, and it did not, in their eyes, it did not turn out favorably at all to them. If you called them right now and said, how did it go today? They would say it sucked. But I know it was the best thing ever. It was the best day ever, because here's why. Without getting into all the details, it just ended with, this was a married couple. And like I said, it did not, there was not a ruling today, But based on what one of the judges, this is in front of the Court of Appeals, based on what one of the judges said, he basically said, we're ruling in favor of, the appellant, which is not them. And so obviously this couple was broken up about it. And the man, the way he was reacting was, and I totally get this. What's next? Well, we got to do this. We got to, what are we going to appeal this? We got to go to the Supreme Court, and I'm going to call this guy, and I'm going to borrow money and this, that. And these are Christians. And all of a sudden, I felt God say very clearly to me, and he said to me, my grace is sufficient enough for you for my power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. Now, that's from the Bible. And I started laughing because what that told me is, and I turned around and I told my friend this, I said, you know what? You need to stop and just get out of God's way. Because if the attorney would have made this, amazing intellectual legal argument, right? Who would have got the glory?
Yeah, the attorney.
The lawyer. And then he's talking about borrowing money from a very rich person who I know. And I said, if this person gives you the money, who gets all the glory?
The rich person.
That's exactly right. And God's not going to let that happen. So right now, he's got this couple standing so close to a brick wall that their nose is touching it, and everybody else is behind them going, yeah, how are you going to get through that? And usually that's exactly when Jesus shows up.
I'm going to be interested to hear the outcome.
To hear
of
how
that
that goes, yeah. So it was really
I'm
fascinating.
going to say a prayer for them, and I hope everything goes their way because they deserve it.
But my point is that sometimes, right now, he's bringing them to the valley. He's letting this happen, and I believe there's a lot of people watching you guys.
Yeah, and that actually,
and they're suffering.
That actually leads to another misconception, which is when you say things like just put God in control, just get out of his way, put it in his hands, because, actually who wants to really be in control? It almost comes across as like a complacent kind of cop-out, kind of like a do-nothing attitude.
Right.
When actually quite the opposite is true.
It takes way more strength to give control to somebody.
You know what I'm saying? Quite the opposite is true.
Let me tell you.
And what actually comes from that generally is much more profound than anything we could do on our own. And it's quite the opposite of doing nothing. Because a lot of times when you do that, you have to do more, but the outcome is very different. So that's another common misconception, I think, is when people say things like that, right? Just put it in God's hand, lay it at his feet, pray about it. It's like it comes across as like the kind of lazy, kind of like do nothing, kind of, just whatever.
Don't deal with it.
Yeah, when it's hard to put it in words, but it's more like you said. That's actually takes more strength.
Oh yeah.
To do and
For
have faith that it's going to work out. And I tend to believe that if you put it 100% in his hands, he's not going to let you down. Right. Because he hasn't yet.
Nope.
And if you feel let down, there's something else cooking.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. There's something else cooking.
Yeah. I think another misconception is, the validity of the Bible. People always, because when you start talking about God, you have to refer to the Bible.
Well, it's all we have.
And then usually that's when people say, oh, well, that thing, it's been translated 6,000 times and all this,
I've heard people refer to it as the book of fairy tales.
Oh, yeah. I used to refer to it as that.
Yeah.
I personally used to refer to it as that.
And I can understand it. I can understand why you would think that.
Yeah.
But I remember from when I was in church as a teenager. And I remember asking a question. They were doing they're doing what they do in church. They were talking about the Bible and talking about what God wants for you in your life. And I remember asking the Sunday school teacher, I'm like, well, why is it the Bible that's the ultimate authority? And they're like, well, that is, it's because it's inspired by God. It's written by God through, he inspired men to write his words, and he made sure everything, every yacht and every tittle was correct. And I'm like, well, but how do we know God wrote it? And, and they're saying, well, because, we know. And, it's kind of a non-answer. This is where faith becomes a part of it. And
there are some answers to that.
And
though.
I was questioning, but my question to him was, well, how do you know some guy just didn't write this as fiction? Throw it out the window. Some moron picks it up and goes, oh, my God, it's the Word of God.
Yeah. I mean, the predictions alone validated.
Absolutely.
I mean, without
they weren't
question.
talking about that back in the 70s, let me tell you.
Which is interesting because, that would have been the answer.
Yeah.
Because this book predicted the future. That's how we know.
Yeah.
Right.
And nothing else can. This is
Sunday
this
school.
Is true.
Wow, it was a whole different kind of church. So
Yeah.
but they didn't have those answers. But I remember that experience.
Well, Kat, what do you say to people when they, because this has come up with me before, when they say, well, it's been translated all this different languages, so many different versions, and which version do you trust?
Mm-hmm.
How do we know that it's not corrupted, this
Sure.
kind of stuff? Because there's a lot of people that
Sure.
have the opinion that it's called Bible corruption, like where
Right.
it's been changed and altered, and what about
contradicts itself.
what about the King James thing, and what's locked up in the Vatican, yada yada. I mean, what's your answer to that?
Well, I think there's a few ways, there's a few answers to that. But one thing, rather than try to answer someone's question like that with all this academic, talk about the Septuagint and the translations
Right.
and the, the different languages. I mean, yeah, you can get into that. You can break that all down. I'm sure, most people, they're like, whatever. They don't understand. They don't want to hear about it. So what I do is I ask them things, or I'll ask them a question like, all right, so you would agree that Jesus obviously was a real person, right? And 99% of people will say, yeah, he was a real dude. So, okay, so let's talk about a different historical figure, like, I don't know, Julius Caesar. Tell me what you know about Julius Caesar. And most people will be able to give you information,
like some
whether
Roman,
it's right or
Roman
wrong.
guy or whatever, right?
But
Everyone knows who that is.
Like
but
to wear a salad.
right. But the thing is that what we know, the information that we have about the people that we study, that we are taught about by our education system, we get it from textbooks. Well, who writes those textbooks and where do they get their information from? Well, they get it from ancient manuscripts, okay? So if you look just at Julius Caesar, they think the date of the composition of the Gallic Wars, which was the writings that actually, talked about his history, was 50 BC. Now, in the Gallic Wars itself, it says that Caesar himself contributed to writing about himself. The other person who wrote about him was his pal. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I hit the lotto and said, Dave Howard, I want you to write my story, I think it's probably going to look an awful lot like I would want it to look like, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
That's
and
fair.
And if I'm contributing to it, right, then it's certainly going to look like the way I want it to look. So you have all that. And yet, Caesar, back in his day, he was the most powerful man in the world. He had military strength. He had money. He had vaults to store up all these documents, right? But the earliest manuscript copies that we have from Julius Caesar are from 900 AD. So that means there was 950 years between the alleged date of composition and, from the original, right? And we only have 10 copies, and we know that that's only half of the books that were written, because the first half of the books talk about the other missing half. Okay, so now let me ask you guys this. If you were my high school history teacher and you handed me a test about Julius Caesar and I raised my hand and I said, you know what? I don't know. I mean,
I don't believe in Julius Caesar.
I don't know, because this is crazy. I mean, you've got 10 copies of something that was written by him and his best friend 950 years after the man, was there. I got to believe there's a little bit of hearsay going on that you would say, brilliant. You get an A. That's a brilliant. No, you would say what? What's in the book.
Well, that and
take the test, right?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. I want someone, and if there's anyone out there listening that wants to call in and explain this to me. So that's Julius Caesar. Now, we could all agree that he's pretty much a footnote in history, right? Okay. So someone, please explain to me how a man, obviously an average-looking Arab Jew, who he never led anything. He never wrote anything down, okay? He was from a town that back then it would be like Taylor, and I'm sorry if anyone from Taylor's listening, but I mean, really, he was from just like
some town, yeah,
right. And
calling him the Nazarene.
He's a
that
carpenter,
was a racial slur,
right? I mean, he never ever told anyone to write anything. He never started any wars, and yet the earliest copies that we have of writings are not 800, 700, 600 years after his death. The earliest copies are about 50 years. Yeah. Some even date, at the earliest date I've seen is like, I think 50 is the earliest I've ever seen. But the point is that the Gospels were all written, if they weren't written like by someone who actually witnessed it, it was somebody who talked to, somebody around who witnessed it. And yet, as far as like the copies of the ancient manuscripts, we have thousands. We have over 5,000. And obviously, we still talk about Jesus Christ today.
Well, that's just the thing.
Someone explain that to me?
That's just actually
phenomenal.
that's just the documents you're talking about, just the documents that specifically talk about him being alive.
Right.
That's not considering the very ancient texts that actually predict the very manner he would show up, how he would die,
by name,
why he came here, why he's coming, what's going on.
Didn't they predict him by name?
No,
not by
so.
Jesus, but
Okay.
Definitely where he came from, how he would show up.
They called him Emmanuel.
Right. And what his purpose would be, how he would die, why he was going to die, the whole nine. I mean, hundreds of years before he showed up.
Isaiah 9:6.
Did anybody predict Julius Caesar?
Not that I know of.
No, I don't think so. And if they did, we don't have the manuscripts to prove it, and which leads to what my answer is, which is not quite as awesome as that one, but I'm just like, look, I'm pretty sure that God's got complete control over that book.
Well, and I
totally complete control over it, which is just a statement of faith. But
sure, and you throw that in too. But here's another thing to consider. Okay, September 11th, big event, right?
Recently proven through scientific study to be
in Europe.
In Europe. So it's gospel now.
Right.
Yes.
So right on.
But okay, so let's just say 2,000 years from now, let's just say something happened and everything got wiped out, but yet somehow, society managed to hang on. Yet, pretty much history's, wiped out. So 2,000 years, from now, all of a sudden, people living in the future start finding newspaper articles about September 11th. Let's say the internet's gone, okay? So they start finding these newspaper articles from all over the world. They're written in different languages, right? Yet, even though they're going to be different takes, they're going to be, like I said, in different languages, the facts of September 11th, now, I know that.
No, I know where you're going.
I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like the facts that everybody wants, us to believe. Okay, let's just say that there
I know
are
where you're
facts,
going with it.
Right? So the facts, the actual events itself wouldn't change. The point of view, the opinion of it, the language might change, but the actual event itself.
Well, the fact that it's historical fact would be something you couldn't argue against at that point, because it literally is history, right? It wouldn't be like a fairy tale.
Exactly.
And that's a great example, because anything like that. I mean, if you were to find,
Kennedy assassination,
exactly, like anything
Lincoln
like this,
assassination.
If you came across all this, start piecing back together our past,
right?
There are going to be things that support themselves. I mean, you're not going to argue with something that's in. I mean, what would be the purpose of manufacturing something like that? All the different languages, having the dates the same, in different countries, different land masses everywhere. You would realize that, okay, this happened.
Exactly, and not everyone saw it. Maybe not everyone actually witnessed the actual event as it happened, right?
Right.
But they still got it right. I mean, they still,
it happened.
because they heard everybody else talking about it. So, and I think
we can agree that towers fell.
It went down.
Right.
It went down.
And we can agree there was a man named Jesus. He was nailed to a cross and he rose
and
from the dead.
Nothing to do with the towers falling.
Right. But I think
not directly, anyway.
if you look at, when I was using the example of Julius Caesar, my whole point in saying something like that to someone is to challenge them, because faith is what? It's confidence in what you know, right? Now, the biblical definition is faith and is confidence in what you know, but, you can't see. Well, if you tell me you're confident that Julius Caesar was this guy who lived in this time and did all these things, you have a lot of faith in what you learned about Julius Caesar.
And
lot.
That's a
It
good,
takes
that's a good way
a
to go at
ton
it.
of faith,
Yeah.
considering this is fact and what we have available about a guy named Julius Caesar.
Questionable.
So much
He may
less
not
credible.
he may have been kind of like Greg Brady.
You never know.
Yeah.
It's
Like,
very
Maybe
questionable.
maybe Julius Caesar was the Jimmy Carter of
the Roman
Caesars,
Empire.
but he could write.
But how dare you question it? That's history, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you'll get that attitude.
Yeah,
We
it's
know,
history.
we have, whatever.
Or it's like, when they pulled back the curtain and exposed Oz.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some
right.
guy.
Yeah.
I have another popular misconception. At least this was on my end. I know for a long time I thought that if you were Christian, you had to be perfect. And I always felt judged. And I always kind of felt, it's like, I'm so flawed, man. How could I ever live up to those standards? How could I ever be a Christian? And without reading the book and actually enjoying fellowship with other Christians
Yeah.
and being properly taught Christianity, that itself is a misconception that keeps people away. It's like, no, you got to look at who Jesus went after. He didn't go after the most pious dude in the crowd. He wants to talk to the prostitutes.
He started at the
the
bottom
lawyers,
and then went down from
the
there.
tax collectors,
Came from-
and even the fishermen. Back then, that was like a lowly trait. Fishermen were looked down on, And I mean, look at who his disciples are. There's a doctor, a lawyer, a former Pharisee, and a bunch of fishermen.
Yeah.
Tax collector. They were
Tax
the worst.
collector,
Yeah. And that's a really
Still are
big
the worst.
big
Listening.
misconception.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. Word to amen to that.
And I think this is directly the work of Satan himself, obviously. When and I've felt this before, right? When someone's like, "Hey, I'm a Christian," you get the feeling like it's like a self-righteous
Yep.
type statement.
Yep.
And
Well, I've found in the past that the people who are telling me they're a Christian are not.
well, I mean, that's to be. You're
I can't.
Right,
I can't. I mean, it's happened to me a dozen times in business in the last 30 years where someone looks me in the face and goes, "Man, I forgot to bring my checkbook, but I'm a good Christian. It'll be fine." Those are always the people who I have to jump through hoops to get paid by, or when they write me checks, they bounce.
Yeah, I mean, that's. That's probably very true. I mean, you probably run into that a lot, and people will use it as an excuse. I mean,
I never tell, and because of that, I never tell anyone I'm a Christian. What I say is when they ask me what's changed or what have you done lately, it's like, well, I've awoken to some truths, and I've decided to devote my life to Christianity.
See, here's
And to me, that's totally different than just saying, well, I'm a Christian.
it's. I don't anymore when someone says. I hear someone say like, "Well, I'm a Christian," or they start talking about Jesus or anything like this. My reaction is different than it used to be. Now I'm kind of like, "Oh, cool,"
Yeah.
And before I would place judgment on those people,
Yeah.
which I thought they were placing judgment on me, and they may have been
Yeah.
right, but
Well, he could have been wrong. Could have been
equally
part of the
wrong.
Deception. Yeah.
equally wrong from my end and
Yeah.
their end.
Yeah.
But I don't think necessarily saying that we're Christian says that we're better than anybody. That's kind of what you're
Yeah.
getting at. It actually, in my
We're admitting
mind,
we're worse.
it actually means that we're worse
I
yeah.
think
and people don't get that.
because
think-
we
yeah.
actually know what it means to, we kind of understand what's going on.
Right.
Where some people may not really know, and it's not their fault necessarily.
And if you're living by the world's standards of morality
Or absence thereof.
or absence thereof,
Exactly.
well, let me tell you, yeah, you got some big trouble.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Well, I think where people get confused, when you become a Christian, your eternal destiny is instantly changed, but you're not.
Right.
And that's something I still kind of
Yeah,
need
we
to
all
wrap my
do.
head around, right?
Yeah, no,
I mean,
especially
in
Kat.
the book of
Yeah.
Romans 7:18, it says, For I have now this is the Apostle Paul. This guy
Paul's awesome.
wrote 3/4 of the New Testament. Yeah. He used to be the biggest jerk. I mean, he murdered. He was like today's
a Pharisee,
ISIS guy.
Or persecuted Christian.
You killed him.
Which Pharisee, that's the kind of people you were talking about before, right? Okay. So Paul wrote this. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For what I do is not the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do. This I keep on doing.
Right.
I mean, this is Jesus's boy who's writing this, right? So what people, and what I did not understand, I shouldn't say what people, I don't know what people think, but for me personally, what I did not understand is that once you confess with your mouth, and if you believe in your heart that Jesus was who he said he was and did what he said he did, your eternal destiny in that moment is changed, okay? But also in that moment, you become filled with the Holy Spirit, and it's an ongoing transformation.
And it takes
the Bible
time.
says there was only one person who ever walked on this earth that was perfect, and that was Jesus Christ.
And it wasn't anyone in this room.
Well,
That's
right,
for
exactly.
sure.
Even Kenny, believe
Especially
it or
not Kenny. And I'm not judging. Sorry.
So
Right, that would be wrong.
So the point is that habits die hard, and thank
Dave-
goodness God is full of
Dave
grace
has
and
touched
mercy.
on this. Dave has
you
touched
know?
on this because the thing is you think you're good, and then you start you continue to study the Bible. You go to Bible study. You realize, oh man,
I'm really a piece of crap.
I'm really a piece of crap. I am
Yeah.
not putting enough effort towards this. And then what happens is your heart begins to convict you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then what happens is you start to feel tremendous guilt over the fact that you are unworthy, undeserving, that the people around you are all better than you. Why are you included? And then what happens is you start to really try and affect real change in yourself.
Yeah.
You start to make different choices.
Yeah. And you stop.
And you start to lose the desire.
Yeah, you really kind of do. And some things, like you said, some things die hard, man.
There's some desires.
Some things die hard and I may never be able to figure it out.
I hope I will.
But the difference is not just saying, well, whatever, say like nicotine, right?
Do more
smoking, whatever, I mean, there's a difference between like just saying the words, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or when you really really hate it, man.
Yeah.
Like you really know that this is definitely demonic in nature.
Right.
No question about this.
Yeah.
And you fight it, and you feel bad every time you break. Every time you're like, I'll go buy a pack, and maybe tomorrow I'll quit.
Yeah,
and then,
maybe this will be the last
Jane's
one.
addiction, right? I'll kick tomorrow, whatever.
Yeah.
And but when you really, really feel bad, because you can. I mean, you get to a point where you're like, why did I just do that?
guilt,
It's horrible.
yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
terrible. Where before, man, I pretty much did whatever I wanted and didn't really. I mean, you may be like, that's that. Oh, sorry. Apologize. But it's different when you really feel like a pile of crap.
No, it's
like,
completely
just
different.
really feel bad.
Well, and it says in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 2, it says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing. And notice it's not renewal, it's renewing, which means it's ongoing.
Perpetual.
So it says, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So it's a process. I mean, it makes it so clear that it's...
Was it John or Paul that gave the whole Christian armor thing?
Ephesians 6.
Paul.
Okay, so it was Paul. Because I'm a big fan of the belt of truth.
Mm-hmm.
Just put on that belt of truth, baby. Tighten that sucker up and let's go.
And it's when it's talking about the armor of God. It's not like literal armor,
Right.
although it is,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But you
Big fan of the belt of truth.
I love
there's
Reminds
sword.
me of the 2004 Pistons championship.
Yeah.
That's
Rasheed
awesome.
Wallace with the belt of truth. Now there's irony in that.
But it alludes to
My weapon of choice is the sword of the Spirit.
right on. But a lot of it,
I think you're using the meat tenderizer of the
the
spirit.
hammer with nubs on it, the mace. Yeah, I bet a lot of that like that. There's a lot of scripture that alludes to an element of protection as well.
Right.
So there is some of this. You don't want to rely on it completely, thinking you're like bulletproof or whatever.
Right.
But I do believe that. I do believe that he will offer you some some hedge of protection.
Yeah, it's there.
You know, there is.
You just have to, but you have to look for it. You have to recognize it. And the thing is once you realize the first little, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh. Then all of a sudden things become clear, and you start to look at things retrospectively. It's like, oh my God, you had a megaphone up to my ear.
Right.
Right.
And I was so blinded by everything else that was going on, I didn't get it.
Right.
Yeah, but then now you get it.
Thank you for not giving up.
That's key.
Well, and I think too, when you talk about condemnation, like feeling condemnation, one thing that I learned not too long ago, and I thought this was so interesting because, and no offense to any Catholics that might be listening, I was raised Catholic.
Always beating on the Catholics.
Catholic guilt, right? I mean, everybody knows what that is. Even if you're not Catholic, you know Catholic guilt. But when I started to read the Bible, I see that Jesus tells, this repentant adulteress that, go and sin no more. And I read that there's no condemnation in Christ Jesus, right? So I realize now that if I feel guilty about something, and it, I feel really bad. I can't stop thinking about it. That's the Holy Spirit convicting me and wanting me to do something. But if I have taken my wrong and genuinely and sincerely lifted it up to the Lord and asked for forgiveness, and then after I feel guilty, that's Satan. That is Satan messing with your head.
The other thing I was going to add to that, too, is if you have done something, and we're going to close with this, if you have done something that you know is wrong, in retrospect, and you truly, and your heart is convicted, and you truly feel guilty about it, that's the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And if you lift it up and you push it away and you try to really, really not repeat that particular sin again, and someone comes to make you feel guilty about what you've done.
Hello, Satan.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And the behavior is demonic if it's persistent. So, and
that was always one of my many issues with certain Christian denominations. That way, I'm not saying Catholic out loud.
Nice.
Is that the fact that no man has the right to make me feel guilty about anything?
Amen.
Yeah.
If there's no condemnation in Jesus, I'm sorry, Catholic priest, you're not going to make me feel bad.
Absolutely.
Right.
This has been Down the Rabbit Hole. We will see you next week. To God be the glory. Great things in store.